So the next thing we're going to look at is the actual discharge process. So we talked about for indication, you're going to get some kind of an oral warning, a bell, audible description of what's going on. Left engine fire, or engine one fire, or APU fire. Sometimes there's a klaxon or a horn, just depends on the aircraft. And you're going to get a message on ICAS if you have an ICAS-based aircraft. And then I said that your fighting equipment is going to light up or going to draw your attention somehow. So on the top here, this is the glare shield, right above your displays, the pilot side and the co-pilot side. This is a left engine fire button and a right engine fire button. And so that would, if you had a left engine fire, the left engine, this would light up red. And you can see it's got a guard. There's like a plastic guard over it. And that's so you don't accidentally hit it. Now, to acknowledge that that engine's on fire and to also activate the system. Now, activate does not mean discharge. It just means prime the system or get it ready. You would flip up the guard and push that button right there. And then if you have other aircraft, they use these like T handles. So in that case, it lights up red. Here they show all three lit up red because it's doing a light test. But if engine one was on fire, just the number one would be lit up red. You would pull this handle to kind of activate the fire suppression system, but it wouldn't actually extinguish it yet. It wouldn't discharge the bottle. When you do that, it arms the bottles and it closes valves going to that engine when you push this button or pull the handle. This is one type of aircraft. This is a different aircraft. Those valves are for things like fuel, air, hydraulic fluid, right? Those are fuel sources and air sources. We're going to close those off. The air is your pneumatic. You also don't want to be sending smoke into the cabin, so you close that shut-off valve. And then it's going to determine the discharge point for your fire bottles. So your fire bottles, you may have two fire bottles for your engines, and both can be used on the left or both can be used on the right. You'll probably have one fire bottle for your APU. You'll probably have multiple fire bottles for your cargo compartment, but they discharge together. So after we've pulled our handle up or pushed our activation button, then we have to, if we get to the point we have to discharge a bottle, that's what these buttons are for. So when I push this button, for instance, this button and this button light up. And this is for the number one fire bottle and the number two fire bottle. Now, both of those can be discharged into the number one or left engine in this case. And that's the same thing down here. On these handles, you can turn them to the left or turn them to the right. So you've pulled it up, and if you twist it left, it's going to discharge what they call bottle A. And if you twist it right, it's going to discharge bottle B into the number one engine. So by pulling it up or pushing that arm button, that determines if you do discharge a bottle, where it's going to go. Okay. Now, you don't always have to discharge the bottle. Oftentimes, simply pressing that arm button or pulling up on the handle with the fuel valves closing and the hydraulic valves closing and the pneumatic valves closing and all that, often the fire will just burn itself out at that point in the case of like an engine fire. So when we were teaching people to run and taxi aircraft mechanics, we would tell them, you get a fire. The first thing you do, first of all, is stop the airplane. Don't sit there and try to fight a fire while you're rolling down a taxiway, because then you are going to end up in the grass before you realize what's going on, because you're looking down at handles and stuff instead of out where you're going. So first thing, stop the plane, set your parking brake, now start fighting the fire. And you hit that arm button or you pull up on your T handle, and then you wait. Because remember, the plane, not only does it tell you it's a fire, but it's going to give you an indication. The indications for the fire are going to go away when that fire burns itself out or when that fire is put out. And so oftentimes, just by removing the fuel source, by closing those valves, the fire will go out and you never actually have to discharge the bottle. Okay. After about 20 to 30 seconds, if you're still getting a fire indication, then discharge your first bottle. Push one of these two lights. Turn this handle to the left or to the right. And then wait again. Again, give it time for that halon to work. The reason you're doing that is a couplefold. One, if you don't need to use both fire bottles, there's no point in discharging both of them. If you don't need to use the fire bottles at all, there's no point in discharging them. The other reason for that is if you put it out and it goes out, and then say you're taxiing back, or if the crew's flying, they keep flying, right? And for some reason that fire reignites, now you have that second bottle available to give it another shot of halon. But if you blow both bottles right away, boom, boom, and that halon dissipates and it reignites, you're done. You don't have another option. So you want to, activate the system, see if the fire goes out by cutting off the fuel. Give it time, then discharge your first fire bottle, and again, give it time. And then if you need to, discharge your second fire bottle. Often you don't have to discharge both, but if you do have to discharge, when you hit that discharge button or turn the handle, that's what sends the electric charge to that squib. The squib bursts that frangible disc, and then the agent flows, because we've selected where we want it to go by pressing the arm button or pulling up on the handle, the agent flows to the location of the fire and hopefully displaces the oxygen to a point where it puts the fire out. And then we save our other bottle for later. So how that works, if we have two bottles, but we have multiple engines, here's one way it works. So here's we'll call them A and B container. They say engine 1 and engine 2 container, but they can both go. You can see there's actually two squibs on this container, right, with two discharge ports. And this discharge port goes down to this it's a check valve to the left engine, and this bottle has one that goes to the left engine as well. Or you can blow both bottles to the right engine. So two bottles can protect either engine with two shots of halon. This is just a bigger picture. Okay. Another method, this is what like the 727 uses, is two bottles T together, and then you have a shutoff valve for each engine. So say my right engine, my number 3 engine was on fire. When I pull the handle, actually on that one it's overhead, when I pull that number 3 handle, it would open this valve right here, as well as shutting off the fuel valve and the hydraulic valve and other stuff going to the number 3 engine. But it would open that valve. So then if I did twist, the discharge handle, if I twist it one way, it's going to release halon from this bottle. If I do it the other way, actually this one would be CO2. It would release, from the other bottle. The 727 uses CO2 instead of halon. So that's how you can have multiple engines protected by certain fire bottles. The 747 and the sim that we play with, there are 4 fire bottles. There's 2 in the left wing and 2 in the right wing. So in the left wing, you've got engines 1 and 2. You can blow those 2 bottles to either of those engines. In the right wing, you have engines 3 or 4. Those 2 bottles can go to engine 3 or 4. They can't go across. There's no cross from wing to wing, but you've got two bottles per wing with 2 engines. Cargo fire bottles are a single discharge, typically shared between compartments if there's more than one compartment. So again, they're set up in a way where the halon or the other, whatever your oxygen displacing compound, can be routed to either, say, a forward cargo compartment or an aft cargo compartment by opening one valve or the other, the forward flow valve or the aft flow valve. If you just have a single cargo compartment, then you eliminate those altogether. But you can see there's often multiple bottles. At minimum, there's 2 bottles, one high rate and one low rate, or one fast flow and one slow flow bottle. But those bottles are going to simultaneously discharge. You can't select which bottle you blow. So the 2 bottles is the fast flow or the high rate discharge bottles. They're going to dump their entire contents into that cargo compartment right away. And the idea there is to flood any air out of the cargo compartment and put the fire out. Whatever's causing the smoke out, right? Because cargo compartments are usually smoke monitored. And then the metered bottles or slow flow bottles, they are going to release their agent, halon or CO2, over time. And the purpose of that is once we've gotten that inert atmosphere in there, that atmosphere is, the cargo compartments are pretty well sealed, but they're not perfectly sealed, right? So slowly that halon's going to leak out and oxygen's going to make its way back in. So by having those low rate bottles, they make up for any halon or agent that's leaking out. And they keep that cargo compartment filled with an inert gas. If you're traveling with your animal's not going to make it. Fluffy's going to suffocate. But the 400 people sitting above Fluffy are going to hopefully make it safely to where they're going. What's that? Not worth it. The animal lovers in the room are not happy with this situation. You're a cat person. Just put your cat in a carrier and keep him in the cabin. Then you don't have to worry about it. Huh? Oh, rabbit. That's right. You're rabbit. You're rabbit. Well, your rabbit should. But yeah, you said it's a Welsh giant. And you said it probably won't fit under the seat anyways. Huge. Okay. These have a minimum of 180 minutes of effectiveness. And that's to give the plane, especially if you have an aircraft that's flying, up to 2 hours away from a diversion airport, i.e. an ETOPS type aircraft, time to make it to an airport. And they keep those cargo compartments snuffed out. Here's just another image of kind of how it's set up. You see cargo compartment, bottles are in the wall. There'd be panels normally covering them. And then how they can be. Here's for cargo fire. You have an armed, like here, a forward arm switch and an aft arm switch. And then you can see the single discharge button. So say we had smoke in our forward cargo compartment. This forward armed button would light up. You would press that. Now these ones close in cargo compartments if there's air. You often have conditioned air being sent into the cargo compartment to keep it warm so Fluffy doesn't die of cold, right? That's going to close as well. So you'll no longer have heated air going in there. So that cargo compartment is going to get cold and it's going to be filled with a non-breathable oxygen or non-breathable atmosphere, right? So Fluffy's going to freeze and going to shiver and then pass out. Okay. Sorry, Fluffy. Here's another image of what that looks like. Well, yeah, that'll first close it off and then hit the discharge button to send the firefighting stuff into that compartment. Again, it may be as few as one of each bottle as well. Usually, if there's one of each bottle, you have the high rate bottle is smaller. The long flow bottle is usually a little bit bigger. But again, it's enough to flood the cargo compartment and then keep it flooded. APUs have their own dedicated bottle. These bottles are very small, fairly small, like the size of a softball usually. You don't need to be that big. They're going to fill the APU enclosure with inert gas. Okay, they discharge into that sealed APU compartment inside the fire zone, whether it's inside of a titanium box or forward of a firewall. But it's going to work similar to the engines. 2 switches or a pull and turn. Okay, an arm switch. That's going to close your fuel valves. That's going to close the pneumatic valves so we don't get smoke coming from the APU into the cabin. And then push a second switch or turn the handle in order to blow the bottle. Now, there's only typically one bottle for the APU. Once you've got that thing out, it's such a small thing. With the fuel valves closed, everything else, the chances of reignition are pretty low. And again, they're inside of a fire zone, which that stainless steel or titanium enclosure will hopefully, if they do have any kind of fire, it's going to contain it in there as well. So. The last area with a permanently installed fire extinguisher is going to be in the lavatories. Each lavatory, and specifically the lavatory waste bin. And these are little halon bottles. Again, these things balled up fist size. Not very big. They got a couple little tubes coming out of them. And in these cases, the tubes, each tube has a little piece of solder plug in it. These don't use a squib or a discharge or anything. They are activated by the heat of the fire itself. And most of them don't have, you can see there's no wires go into this or anything. There's no indication outside of it. It's inside where the trash can goes, behind that little flapper door. And that flapper door is a requirement. If that flap is missing for the trash can, the plane cannot take off. Or you have to lock the lavatory closed so nobody can use it. Because that flapper door is what creates a sealed compartment so that this bottle can put the fire out. If that flapper door is missing, the trash can's not sealed and this will not be effective. So it has to, that flapper door has to close and it has to spring shut. That's why those are, anyone ever try to throw stuff away on an airplane? It's really hard to like get it into the trash can. It's not because they just want to make you like touch the lid with your dirt, with your fingers that you just wash and get all dirty. It's got a purpose. But the tubes are directed into the waste bin, the solder plugs melt, and heat from the fire releases it. The way we do know is every time we did a check, and did cabin crew do this? Did you have to check the witness strips? I think our flight attendants did, if I remember right. So the flight attendants will go, they'll open the little door where the trash can is, and they'll look for a little strip, a sticker that's got little heat circles on it. And if those circles have turned dark, if they've turned black or dark gray, it means that there was a fire that caused them to get hot and the bottle likely discharged. So pre-flight, the flight attendants go in there, open the little door, make sure that their heat strip doesn't say there was a fire. No, that strip right there, they're just heat. It's like receipt paper. You ever have thermal paper? It's like a thermal paper. You're familiar with that? Printers that do heat print. A vape. Probably got hot. It's heat related. They have a heat element in them, and the batteries can get warm. The old ones are back in the day. I worked with a couple guys that there was like this whole culture around like making your own vapes. It was really weird, and they would like, huh? Are you familiar with that? Like people that make their own vapes. Is it still around? I don't know. I know I had a couple guys I worked with that were really big into it, and then like Juuls came out and stuff like that, and people were like, yeah, I don't want to mess around with all that crap. But the batteries would like, you want to talk about lipo or lithium ion battery fires. These guys were getting cheap cells from China that were like sketchy as all get up, and they'd catch, people would be like vaping and it'd catch fire and burn their lips. So I could see one of those setting this thing off. Yep. Yeah, because it didn't set the fire alarm off. So there's a smoke detector in the lavatory itself, and then this is in the trash can. Because there have been crashes where people back in the day threw cigarette butts into the trash can. Planes have crashed because of cigarette butts in the trash can. If you go on a plane today, the last part of this is you will see near every lavatory door, there is still an ashtray there. That's another item that has to be in place for the plane to fly. Because if somebody lights up a cigarette on the plane, there has to be a safe place to dispose of it. Even though they used to be in every seat. I remember when I was like 6 or 7 sitting there playing with the ashtray and the armrest. My mom yelling at me, "That's dirty, get your fingers out of there." Anyways.